Count the months of the year. Go ahead. Start from the end. December, November, October, September. Now say them slowly and listen to what they're actually telling you. September, Septem, 7, October, Octo, 8, November, Novum, 9, December, Decem, 10, the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month, the 10th month. Except September isn't the 7th month, it's the 9th. October isn't the 8th, it's the 10th. November isn't the 9th, it's the 11th. December isn't the 10th, it's the 12th. Every one of these months is named for a number that is 2 places off from its actual position in the calendar. Not 1, not 3, exactly 2. This is not a quirk. This is not a coincidence. This is the scar left by a surgery that was performed on the calendar over 2,000 years ago, a surgery so fundamental that it altered the architecture of how the Western world measures time, and so poorly explained that the evidence of the alteration is baked into the names of the months themselves, spoken aloud by billions of people every day, and never questioned. 2 months were added. 2 months that didn't exist in the original calendar. 2 months that were inserted at the beginning of the year, pushing every other month 2 places forward, breaking the numbering system permanently, and nobody ever renamed the other months to fix it. The scar was left in the open, visible, legible, hiding in plain sight for over 2 millennia. The deeper I went into why those months were added, and more importantly, what was there before them, the more I realized that the calendar we inherited isn't a measurement of time. It's a political monument, and the thing it was built on top of has been buried so completely that most people don't know it ever existed. Start with the original, because the original is where everything breaks. The earliest Roman calendar, attributed by tradition to Romulus himself, the legendary founder of Rome around 738 BC, had 10 months, not 12, 10. The year began in March, Martius, named for Mars, the god of war, and it ended in December, the 10th month. The months were Martius, Aprilis, Maius, Junius, Quintilis, Sextilis, September, October, November, December. 304 days, 10 months. And then the year ended. What came after December was not a month. It was a gap, an uncounted stretch of winter, roughly 61 days, that existed outside the calendar entirely. The Romans didn't ignore winter, they simply didn't count it. The days between December and March had no names, no numbers, no official position in the structure of the year. They were outside time, a void, a space between the end of one year and the beginning of the next that the calendar acknowledged by refusing to acknowledge it. This raises a simple but critical question. Why would a civilization as sophisticated as early Rome leave 2 months of the year unnamed and uncounted? The official explanation is primitive timekeeping. The early Romans were agriculturalists. Their calendar tracked the growing season. Winter was irrelevant to farming, so they didn't bother counting it. The calendar began when the work began, in March, and ended when the work ended, in December. The winter gap was simply an oversight, a blank space in an unsophisticated system waiting to be filled by smarter men. But here's what troubles me about that explanation. The Romans weren't the only culture whose year began in March. Across the ancient Mediterranean, across cultures that had no contact with Rome, the year began in spring. The Babylonian calendar began in the month of Nisanu, corresponding to the spring equinox. The ancient Persian calendar began at Nowruz, the vernal equinox. The Hebrew calendar places its creation of the world at Nisan, in spring. The agricultural calendars of pre-Roman Europe aligned the beginning of the year with the return of growth. March wasn't an arbitrary starting point. It was the point at which the natural world began again. The year started when life started. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Every ancient calendar that aligned the year with the rhythms of agriculture, of biology, of the visible behavior of the natural world began in spring, The winter was not an oversight. It was a recognition that the dead season was not part of the cycle of growth and work and harvest, that it belonged to a different order of time, that counting it the same way you counted the living months was, in some fundamental sense, a category error. The evidence suggests something much larger than a gap in a primitive calendar. Now let's talk about who filled the gap, because the filling is where the politics enter. Around 713 BC, according to Roman tradition, the second king of Rome, Numa Pompilius, added 2 months to the calendar. Januarius, named for Janus, the two-faced god of doorways, beginnings, and endings, and Februarius, named for Februa, a festival of ritual purification associated with the dead. The year now had 12 months and 355 days, roughly aligned with the lunar year. The uncounted winter was swallowed by the calendar. The void was filled. The gap was closed. But here's what the official history mentions and then moves past. Numa didn't just add 2 months. He took days from the existing months to create them. He shortened the original 10 months, stealing a day from each of the 30-day months to give his new months enough days to exist. The original calendar's rhythm was disrupted. Months that had been complete were reduced. The architecture was altered not by addition alone, but by subtraction. Something was taken from what existed to build what was being imposed. As if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand, and here's the detail that kept me awake. Numa placed January at the beginning of the year and February at the end. Not between December and March, where the winter gap had been. At the beginning. Before March, the year no longer started when life returned. It started in the dead of winter, in the darkest, coldest, most lifeless point of the year. It started with Janus, the god who looks both forward and backward, the god of doorways and transitions, the god of thresholds. The year no longer began with growth. It began with a door. This raises a simple but critical question. Why would you move the beginning of the year from the moment of natural renewal to the dead center of winter? The official answer is religious. Janus was the god of beginnings. January was his month. The year should start with its patron deity, all very tidy. But here's what the official answer doesn't address. Starting the year in March had been the Roman practice since the founding of the city. It was woven into the civic and religious fabric of Roman life. The Ides of March was the date for settling debts, for beginning new terms of service, for the most important civic and religious transitions of the year. Moving the new year to January didn't just change a date. It severed the start of the year from the start of life. It made the beginning of the year an administrative event rather than a natural one. The year no longer began because the earth said so. It began because a king said so. The silence was deafening. Now watch what happens next, because the calendar doesn't stop being manipulated. It gets worse. In 153 BC, the Roman Senate officially moved the start of the consular year from March to January 1st so that newly elected consuls could take office earlier to respond to a military rebellion in Hispania. The New Year's position was changed not for astronomical reasons, not for agricultural reasons, not for any reason connected to the natural world, for military convenience. The calendar was adjusted to serve the state. Then, in 46 BC, Julius Caesar reformed the calendar entirely. Working with the Alexandrian astronomer Sosigenes, he abandoned the lunar system and imposed a solar calendar of 365 days with a leap year every 4 years. He extended months to their current lengths. He kept January as the first month. And then, 1 year after the reform, the Roman Senate renamed the month of Quintilis, the 5th month in the old system, to Julius in honor of Caesar himself. After Caesar's assassination, his adopted son Augustus took the next month, Sextilis, and renamed it Augustus, ensuring that it had 31 days, equal to Caesar's month, by taking a day from February. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Two emperors carved their names into the calendar. They didn't just rename months, they restructured them. They adjusted the number of days to ensure their months were equal in length, taking days from February, the month of the dead, the month of purification, the month that had always been treated as different, as lesser, as the month that could be shortened because it belonged to the infernal gods. February has 28 days because two emperors needed their months to have 31. That's not astronomy. That's ego. And through all of this, through every reform, every manipulation, every act of political vanity, the original numbering was never corrected. September remained the 7th month in the 9th position. October remained the 8th month in the 10th position. November and December carried their wrong numbers forward through 2,000 years of human history. The scar was never healed because healing it would have required acknowledging that the months had been moved, that the calendar had been restructured, that the year we inherited is not a natural system, but a constructed one, built by kings and emperors and politicians for reasons that had nothing to do with the sun or the moon or the rhythms of the earth. I want to pause here and ask something that isn't usually asked. What did the world feel like when the year began in March? Because March is the equinox, the return of light, the moment when day and night are equal and the balance tips toward warmth. Seeds go into the ground, animals emerge, the frozen world thaws and begins to move. Starting the year in March means starting the year with a beginning, a real one. A physical, visible, biological beginning that every person on Earth can verify by walking outside and looking at the ground. Starting the year in January means starting it with nothing. The dead of winter, the shortest days, the coldest nights. Nothing is growing, nothing is being born. The year begins in absence, in darkness, and the only authority that tells you it has begun is the calendar itself, not the sun, not the ground, not the behavior of any living thing, the institution. The deeper I went, the more I realized that the addition of January to the calendar was not a correction. It was a substitution of institutional authority for natural rhythm. The original calendar began when the earth said it was time. The reformed calendar began when the state said it was time. And the state said January. Not because January was the beginning of anything in the natural world. Because January was the month of Janus, the god of doors, the god of transitions, the god who stands at the threshold between one thing and another and controls who passes through. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across every domain I've examined. Systems that synchronized human life with natural rhythms, with the equinox, with the moon, with the visible cycles of growth and death, replaced by systems that synchronized human life with institutional authority. The 13-month calendar replaced by the 12-month calendar. The lunar month replaced by the irregular month. The midnight waking replaced by consolidated sleep. Local solar time replaced by railroad time. And March, the month of spring, the month of renewal, the month when the earth itself says begin, replaced by January, the month when nothing begins except the state's counting. The official explanation collapses here because the Romans themselves knew it was wrong. They never fixed the numbering. They left September through December carrying the wrong numbers for 2,000 years. They left the evidence of the alteration in the names of the months themselves, visible to anyone who speaks a Romance language, visible to anyone who has ever counted in Latin, visible to every child who has ever been taught the months and wondered, even briefly, why the 9th month is called the 7th. I don't have a complete theory. I have a question that multiplies the deeper I look. Why did a king add 2 months to a calendar that was working? Why did he move the beginning of the year from the equinox to the dead of winter? Why did 2 emperors carve their names into the months and steal days from February to inflate their own? Why did nobody ever rename September, October, November, and December to match their actual positions? Why was the most obvious evidence of a political restructuring of the calendar left in the names of the months for 2,000 years, spoken aloud every day and never corrected? And the question underneath all the others, the one that sits in the 61-day winter gap that used to exist between December and March. What was that gap for? What did it mean to a civilization to have a period of time that existed outside the calendar? A stretch of winter that was not counted, not measured, not claimed by any month, not governed by any name? A void in the year that the people lived through but the system didn't record? I'll leave you with this. Say the months out loud. September, October, November, December, 7, 8, 9, 10. Listen to what they're telling you. They're telling you they've been moved. They're telling you they used to be somewhere else. They're telling you that 2 months were inserted before them, pushing them forward, breaking their names, and nobody cared enough to fix the damage. Because the people who did the inserting weren't building a calendar. They were building a monument to Janus, to Numa, to Julius, to Augustus. They were writing their names into the measurement of time itself, and the time didn't resist, and the names stuck, and the numbers broke, and we've been saying the wrong numbers for 2,000 years without asking why. The year used to begin in spring. It used to begin when the world began. It used to begin with life. Now it begins in January, in the dark, in the cold, with the god of doors, and nobody remembers what was on the other side.